What is there to say about Taylor Bradley? If writers or someone who talks as much as I do is at a loss for words, we're all in trouble. I met Taylor B. 4 years ago in what I call a support group, though neither of us do drugs, have been divorced legitimately, or suffer from life-altering illnesses, unless you count depression, which is a standard feature of being a writer. I am constantly in awe of Taylor's writing ability, tenacity, and self-discipline. 3 nouns I know how to use, but don't know how to do. Don't know how to do. There it is. I found it. Somewhere in my mouth. Her output is on the same level as Danielle Steele's, except her I'm willing to read. Relax, Danielle Steele, #girlboss, could give a parental advisory about me and could buy it and sell me the world over. A while ago, Taylor asked me to open this evening for her, and I'm just thrilled and terrified that she did. I don't think I have a bigger living cheerleader in this rotten town than Taylor. And what she's allowed me to do tonight is no exception to her faith in my abilities. So please, the lady of the evening, an authoress, I mean, not a hooker, but live your life either way. Taylor Bradley.
Thank you. What an introduction. Holy cow. So I also am going to talk about sex toys. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually not, but I am. Later. Okay, here's what I have to say. First and foremost, settle in. This is story time, okay? You can close your eyes, just don't fall asleep. Or if you do, just don't do it loudly. You can be present, you can breathe. These next 90 minutes are just for us to hang out. I'm gonna tell you some stories. That's it. If you need to pee, just go pee. If you need to get water, just get water. It's okay. This is not formal or rigid in any of that way. Even if I feel like I might build this like intensity up here, like you can't do anything, just do it, okay? It's not that intense. I'm faking it the whole time. You cannot write about tragedy with perspective while still experiencing it. That's the trouble many artists are currently coming to terms with. We're trying to find the right words, the motivation to keep pushing despite the impossible odds of financial success. We're trying to convince you that we have something worth leaving your homes to experience, worth the price of gas, yikes, admission, and this perpetual fear of violence in even the most unassuming of places. Storytelling is a cornerstone of the human existence, one we must find solace in during times of great uncertainty and divide. We're all searching for purpose, things that we can stand up for, get behind, find joy in again, something to believe in again. Desperate for escape, many of us turn to backlit devices that ping and ring with satisfying hits of dopamine and constant newness, but few of us really take the time to reconnect to the things that make life worth living. The quiet, tangible moments of beauty and unexpected peace. It's hard to allow ourselves the space to process the things that sit unattended to in our memories. It takes great patience and courage to exist uninterrupted in the simplicity of the present. So tonight, amidst a very noisy and complicated world, I offer you something simple. A handful of stories, all true, that meant enough to me to write down. I'll start at the beginning. My world was ending. It was 2018, and all of California was on fire. I was living in a house that was not my own, but that a man that I called Grandpa, who wasn't really my grandpa, owned. But he died the day before I officiated a wedding, and nothing has been okay since then. I spent a lot of my time at swanky, shallow LA parties, or listening to Judy Garland in my bathtub. That wasn't really mine. I was incapable of making any decisions, so I just drank a lot and I watched a lot of old movies on not my TV. But the TV of a man, not my not grandpa, but one of his kids, but we don't talk about him anymore. But his TV worked really well despite everything, so it was put to use. I didn't have Wi-Fi, so I spent a lot of the time in Starbucks parking lots down the street from not my house because I was uninterested in actually going into Starbucks. And I didn't have a washer and dryer, so I did laundry at a friend's house who actually did call Grandpa, Grandpa, and he meant it. I slept most of the time in the guest room of the model home that I made breakfast in most mornings. And the nights that I didn't sleep there, I slept at friends' apartments, away from the fires and the heartbreak and the lack of answers and the abundance of questions. I spent a lot of time cleaning not my messes after moving away from another house that wasn't mine, but that was owned by a woman that I imagined a mother-in-law might look like. She didn't own it either. It was actually paid for by her father, who I didn't call Grandpa, even though that probably would have made more sense. Her son and I loved each other very much. We took care of each other for the best we could, for as long as our hearts and stomachs could stand it. But then one day, we both realized that our broken pieces didn't go together like broken people's broken pieces should. So after 10 years of trying to mend the unmendable, he decided to stay at not his house, and I decided to stay at not mine. I've only ever felt truly home twice in my life. The first is when I dressed up as Dorothy, and I drove to all the houses that I grew up in, begging the question, what is the difference between a house and a home? The act of driving to all of these addresses with different street names and city names and numbers and floor plans and foliage and strangers living in them and not being able to go inside but just stand outside and look up at them with their closed windows and their closed shutters. It felt like going home. And the second time is when I had to pack up not my grandpa's house and my almost mother-in-law's house in less than 10 hours. I slept in 2 different beds and one night and a third the second. I had my entire car packed with photos and files and stuffed animals and electronics and everything that I claimed to care about in the world, and I drove past burning hills in a burning valley, and I felt like I was drowning and alone, and I have never been more afraid in my entire life than in that moment, and a piece of my heart fell into place. And for the second time in my life, I felt home again. The only things I knew I wanted were to be married and have a family. And then my almost sister-in-law found out that she was pregnant, and my almost brother-in-law was getting a divorce, and I realized maybe I didn't want either of those things. That was the year my mother, my real one, came to see me for my birthday for the first time in 11 years. But we kept conversation as not real as possible, so we could just enjoy seeing each other's faces for a few hours and move on to the next phase of our separately frightening yet oddly parallel lives of almost homelessness, but not really almost homelessness, because no one would let that happen, no matter how pathetic or desperate we became, which is simultaneously horribly torturous because of the guilt, but also comforting because of the reasons it's comforting to know that you'll never be homeless. Not my grandma, who I didn't call grandma, but who I called Shirley, was the closest thing at that time to what I considered to be family. I was helping her finish her memoir. She used to be this very famous movie actress, but she had dementia, which made it hard for her to remember names or places in her carousel of memories, and bad arthritis, which made it really hard for her to type. But she had this insatiable drive to tell her story and get it out in the world, and I wanted nothing more than to help her make that happen. She had 2 regrets: not saying what she wanted to her second husband, a man she says that she should not have married, and not traveling more. And mind you, this woman has traveled the world. I've been reading up on flights to London, a place I've always wanted to visit, but never have because of one excuse or another. And I have a feeling that despite my fear of flying, the trip there will be the 3rd time that I'll feel at home. I guess I'm most comfortable when I'm alone and taking risks, or when I'm alone and afraid of doing something, but I have to do it anyway. Either way, I'm alone. And there are very few people or things that are actually mine for real, which may be why I put so much value on the small amount of absurd and unnecessary possessions that I have, because they're mine. For real, they belong with me, and I belong with them. But almost everything else in my life, the things and the people that I spend the most time with, are not mine for real. They're just for now. Or not quite. Or almost. Or just to look at. And the ones that aren't real can't always love me in a healthy way. So to keep myself from being poisoned, I just take them in small doses. But maybe it's time to stop self-medicating. Maybe it's time to try to find something real. According to Capote, when I find the place where my things and I belong together, it'll feel like Tiffany's. But I'd be happy if I just had a working washer and dryer. So the book takes place over the 2 years that follow that piece. Little did I know the entire world would be unrecognizable by 2020, but it made for quite the protagonist story arc, okay? Let me tell you. So this next piece is called Strangers in Traffic, and it opens at the beginning of summer in 2019, and yes, there are sex toys in it, and it was not planned. It's just, and thank you. That was a perfect introduction. Okay. Every year or so, I experience what I have so lovingly named a season. It is essentially a period of extreme boredom that springs from a bout of depression that causes me to act strangely in order to entertain myself and quell the ennui of my soul. Currently, I'm at the end of my 2019 season, and I have found myself reflecting on how much this particular spell of boredom has transformed me. The other day, on my commute home from work, I'm going to move this a little bit, I attempted to get the attention of anyone in any of the cars that surrounded mine, okay? I sang loudly with all the windows down. I stared blankly at people. I waved at isolated strangers with their eyes fastened directly in front of them into the abyss of the 101 or like down in their cup holders, refusing to look away from their cell phones. No one looked at me except for one remarkably handsome, blonde-haired, blue-eyed man who was being chauffeured in the backseat of this older woman's car. She wasn't marked as an Uber or a Lyft, and he quickly grew bored with all of it, so he stopped looking at me. I had lost the round. I quickly succumbed to the fact that I would be warily driving another, 45 minutes without the gusto to continue to bother people with my persistence, to bring something new and fun and exciting to their daily monotonous commutes. The next day after work, I went to Baskin-Robbins, and I seriously debated buying myself an ice cream cake to celebrate my birthday, which was still 4 months away. I've never had an ice cream cake on my birthday, and I was in the mood for balloons and for people to sing to me. But once I got there, I decided against it, and I left with a single scoop of mint chocolate chip ice cream on a slightly stale cake cone, which is hardly a cure for anything except clean, unsticky fingers and cellulite-free thighs. So I went back to the apartment I was staying in, sat on the floor for a while, scrolling through an endless cycle of trends and advertisements, smiling families, people showcasing their mental breakdowns in an attempt to show the reality of their lives. And I stumbled upon an ad for Adam and Eve toys. You know, the company with the radio commercials that used to play on Pandora before Spotify was a thing. And the woman would be like moaning about desires and fantasies, and you would just sit through it like really uncomfortably waiting for your Blink-182 playlist to just start up again. To be honest, I had been drinking, and I suppose 4 shots of vodka during a particularly strong season was enough to not only encourage me to click on the advertisement, but to buy 2 items. I'm not sure, yes, my father's sitting in the front row. I'm not sure if you've ever purchased sex toys online before, but if you have, you would know the ridiculous number of freebies that they throw in with the package is enough to put any Spencer's in a 20-mile radius completely out of business. The package arrived at my P.O. box a week or so later, and I brought the box back to my car in the post office parking lot and tore it open. I was strangely nervous about the entire affair, which I suppose was the point all along. In such a desperate attempt to feel something new, I pushed my own boundaries to the extent of humiliation in a government facility parking lot, which is honestly the very worst place to feel humiliation. There were playing cards and boxes in boxes and pastel-covered velvet pouches with phallic glass structures and charging cables and how-to manuals and silicone battery-operated knockoffs of male anatomy and I felt horribly lonely. So I just shoved everything back in the box and I just threw it in the trunk of my car. And I drove with the caution of a politician who had imbibed one too many drinks, fearful that I would have to explain to some no-nonsense officer of the law why I had so many questionable objects in my possession. Not surprisingly, I did not feel the need to elicit attention from any of the depressed robotic drivers on my way home. I just tucked everything into a drawer, sat on my floor, and had a good cry. I awoke the next morning feeling no gratification for my unusual behavior, and I immediately went back to the drawing board. Okay, what had previously marked the end of a season? I usually cycle through the typical debate of like a change in hair color, right? Or like potential tattoo choices, but ultimately settle on something more like a spontaneous walk into the pool, fully clothed, why not? I couldn't stand one more moment of not being fully submerged in water, so here we go. Much more entertaining than a bad bleach job, I suppose. But this urge for newness was not going away this time. Not without a fight. I spent the rest of that day driving up and down Hollywood Boulevard with my windows open, soaking in the strange noises, smelling the desperation of performers down on their luck. And I felt no satisfaction in it. It just made me feel a little less lonely. I pulled into a Walgreens parking lot and watched a homeless man fill shopping carts out front with empty aluminum cans and found blankets. I waited in my car for what felt like hours, but was realistically 10 minutes, debating whether or not to go inside, buy the bleach kit, and spend the rest of the evening suffocating my hair into straw. I Googled hair salons near me, found one open late, made an appointment for the following day, and drove home with knots in my stomach. I wasn't nervous about the drastic change. I was scared that even this might not make me feel better. The next evening, I drove to the hair salon, showed them a photo of some celebrity on a red carpet, and I said, "This, please." The process was long and tedious, but it was nice to just sit and be present. My hairdresser told me about how her failing marriage caused her heart condition, and the doctor said she had only months to live. So she left her husband and started living the life she wanted to, and supposedly her heart healed itself. So now she's been traveling the world and writing about it on a spiritual blog. It's amazing what our bodies will do to tell us we're in trouble. At this point, I had been seeing specialist after specialist for extremely swollen glands in my neck, but I didn't bring this up. I had an ultrasound a few days prior to ensure that it wasn't cancer, and I was still waiting for the results. And I wondered if this was from all the years I spent feeling silenced. She was brushing my hair with such tenderness, I felt compelled to tell her she did not have to be so careful. I never had a sensitive scalp, so pulling never bothered me. "Oh, do you have siblings?" she asked. No, I told her I was an only child. And she stopped brushing my hair. Well, usually people who don't have sensitive scalps had their hair pulled a lot as children. I laughed. Well, my mother used to stand on my hair and tickle me when I was in trouble, so I guess that makes sense. Quickly, I realized I was the only one laughing, and I fell into an apologetic, overly descriptive explanation about how it was supposed to be a more fun way to be punished. She stayed silent, which forced me to fill the air with excuses and descriptions of the strange act. Well, she would point to the ground in front of her, And I would either lie down on my own, or she would carefully grab my hair and slowly pull me to the ground, telling me that it wouldn't hurt more if I worked with her instead of against her. But she was tickling me and I was laughing, so she probably didn't even know it hurt. Maybe it's my fault. More silence. The kind that had the very distinct sound of pity, like this one. I broke it with a nonchalant, anyway. The go-to word for ending awkward conversations when there's nothing left to be said. I sent my mother a photo of my new hair before I left the salon and called her on my way home, my scalp burning slightly, the tips of my ears peeling from chemical irritation, but I looked and felt like a new person. Well, I looked and felt like I was disguised as a new person. I could still feel the roots of my hair under the surface waiting for a chance to remind me that nothing has actually changed. I asked her what she thought, and she said she thought I looked like a bombshell. We talked for a while about my current job and the weather. And then out of nowhere, she asked me if she had been a good mother. I guess I just feel like I haven't, she said, and I need to know. Fresh off the conversation about strange and unusual childhood punishment, I didn't know the right thing to say. So I spoke really slowly, choosing my words like supermarket produce and smelling them and checking every side before putting them in the bag. Okay. I still feel hurt that you offered to buy me a nose job as a graduation present. I know you were only asking because you got yours done and you wanted me to feel beautiful, but I don't think that was the right way to go about that. I've had to work very hard to love my nose, and I had to do it knowing that you thought it was ugly. She told me it was probably the result of her own mother's cruelty spilling out in unusual ways. And she apologized for it, sincerely. I pulled up to my apartment, parking on the street out front, and before I spoke again, I looked at myself in the mirror. And for the first time in a while, I really felt beautiful. I managed to love myself despite any mistakes that may have been made. But that's not really important, Mom. I forgive you for that. You taught me that I could do anything I wanted to. You always encouraged me to try new things. If I showed interest in something, you guys ran out and bought me whatever I needed and signed me up for lessons. You taught me curiosity for the world, a love for the arts, literally all of them. And I'm a very hard worker. I'm independent. I'm confident. And my goal is always to leave everything better than I found it and act with love towards everyone and everything, no matter what. So yes, I think despite a very few human setbacks, you were and are a great mother. A few days later, I was driving around the suburbs I used to live in before moving into the city, and I pulled up at a red light across from my ex-boyfriend. I recognized the car first, and then him in his mustard-colored cardigan, behind the wheel, she knows, looking left towards oncoming traffic. He glanced over in my direction for a brief moment, but there was no recognition in his eyes. I forgot. I didn't look anything like I used to. I was still wearing my disguise. My season was ending, and I was letting go of so many of the things that made me bitter over the last decade. And the swelling in my throat was finally going down because I was finally saying all the things that I needed to. And after 10 years together, that was all it took for him to become just another stranger in traffic that wouldn't look at me. guys. I'm getting real vulnerable up here, so thanks for the support. I've spent the majority of the last 4 years traveling. Okay, so I've been bouncing from place to place to place, trying to figure out, the setting for the next book, I guess, the next chapter of my life. But there's one thing I've always known for certain, and that is that it will not be Los Angeles. Okay? On the record here. This next piece takes place at a Christmas party in the heart of Tinseltown, just a few weeks before I tried to leave the first time. I like having all my friends in the audience. They all know. They know all the shit. Sorry. Okay. Los Angeles was really starting to grate on me. Every time I found myself on another freeway, I felt my chest tighten. I was stuck in a city that was stuck in a circle jerk of traffic and clumsily stroked egos. It was the age of swiping left on any man with a professional headshot in his poorly curated dating profile. If I had to hear about one more problem regarding pilot season or stressing about meeting a self-tape deadline, I was going to have a mental breakdown with no ulterior self-promotional value. I was becoming the jaded piece of work 20-something that worked in the industry and didn't like herself enough to get the hell out of Los Angeles. I was attending a Christmas party in some swanky apartment off Franklin when something in me finally snapped. Supposedly, the couple who was throwing the party was featured on the hottest show of last season, which was Marie Kondo's Tidying Up. And everyone who was a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend was flocking to the door with their arms filled with figgy pudding and spiked cider. I could hear the social buzzing of the flies. Oh my God, is this actually where they filmed the show? Can you show us where she prayed to the house to thank it? I rolled my eyes and I made my way to the spread of free artisanal cheeses. Within minutes, the only straight man in the room sniffed me out, and I watched, out of boredom, as he embarrassed himself by trying to flirt. You kind of have this Tara Reid thing going on. It's hot. I squinted at him. Tara Reid, is this 1998? I hated everything about this entire interaction, but I just kept bantering, desperate for an outlet for all the pent-up anger and the predictability that filled my days working as a temp for movie studios. Can I get you a drink? I looked down at the drink currently in my hand. Yeah, they're free here, so the pickup line doesn't really work. Everything in my body was just telling me, walk away, okay? My conscience was trying to talk me down. You're not a vicious person. You're just burnt out, and you probably should have skipped the party, but you didn't. This guy was such a skis-ball, though. I felt justified in unleashing everything I had been keeping pent up about these types of men. The types of men that I continued to get hired working for, who insisted that I wear skirts or dresses to the office instead of slacks. The types of men that told me in Malibu I was a 7.5, but in the Midwest you'd be a solid 10. Types of men who always started off conversations with, "Are you an actress?" and then would scoff when I told them I primarily write. What a waste. As if they were somehow complimenting me. Then the types of men who told me to calm down whenever I showed any kind of emotion other than happiness or complete understanding, even when they told me horrible things. The types of men who couldn't afford to pay me a fair wage but could invite me to Soho House after work for drinks. Poor guy. He was just another greasy 30-something clocking in under 5'6" with a Napoleon complex trying to pick up a dumb blonde for casual sex at a Christmas party. So, what do you do? A common enough opening, seemingly harmless, but merely a setup to showcase his self-proclaimed ability to flirt. You know what? What do you think I do? You're an actress? I shook my head. Oh, you're a model. I'm a writer, actually. Took a sip of whatever fruity mixture he was drinking and decided, yeah, I follow a lot of female writers on Instagram. 'Cause they're hot. Was a good response. All right, your turn. You can dish it out, but can you guess what I do? I set my drink down. I have always prided myself on being a keen observer of strangers. One of my favorite ways to pass the time is to people watch, filling in the blanks of their lives like Mad Libs. But I have never had an opportunity to see how right I was. I looked him over. You have the facial hair of someone on the outskirts of the industry, like an assistant casting director or a movie premiere caterer. You have elbow patches on your corduroy jacket, so you probably pride yourself on knowing a lot about the human condition. You studied philosophy or psychology in college. It's a toss-up because the girls were really easily impressed and open-minded enough to not care about your height, so it got you laid. You saw the degree through to the end and are still paying off the debt, but you reread your only copy of Freud's essays on the theory of sexuality every few years. You can sprinkle in quotes at parties and seem like an intellectual. But you make most of your money doing something horribly boring, like real estate or an assistant in some big financial company. You're too much of a coward to take a big risk, to commit yourself to something inconsistent. He had this big, stupid grin on his face, and his brows were furrowed. I didn't need to ask, but I did anyway. How did I do? I work for a casting director part-time. I am a real estate agent full-time. I have a master's degree in psychology because I am fascinated with human sexuality, kinks specifically. He paused before trying to win some small shred of dignity back by asking me a question I was statistically bound to get wrong. What about my name? If you know so much about me, what's my name? Michael. No. Brett. You look like your name would be Brett. I picked up my drink again and drank it for reassurance that I was not a horrible person, that I did not just absolutely break this man. He laughed a little, that uncomfortable, forceful laugh that's mostly just pushing air out of your nose in disbelief. Did someone put you up to this? Put me up to what? You approached me. He took his black leather wallet out of his back pocket and handed me the driver's license. His name was actually Brett. What's wrong with my facial hair? I had broken him. Just a month ago, I told another poor soul he clearly struggled with depression, and that sent him into a spiral of existential dread and quarter-life self-discovery about his sex addiction and suicidal tendencies. Nothing's wrong with it. Look, I'm sorry I said anything. I tried to excuse myself, but he touched my arm to get me to stay. No, don't be sorry. I just want to know what you meant. Listen, I don't even know what I meant, okay? I could just tell. Look. What are you drinking? I'll fill up your glass as a white flag, okay? Okay, well, I'm doing the make-your-own jingle juice. It's mostly just punch, just a splash of vodka. I'm a real sissy when it comes to hard liquor. Ooh, I was being tested. The spirit of Christmas was testing my ability to shut the hell up and walk away, and I was failing miserably. I just took his cup and I made him the drink that he requested. And then desperately, he followed me to the folding tables with the miscellaneous bottles of alcohol and mixers. All right, you never told me what you were drinking. I feel like it would tell me a lot about you as a person. With the vodka still in my hand, I poured myself an admirable helping, and I drank it straight. What did you learn about me as a person? You're an alcoholic? I laughed for the first time all evening. No, I'm just depressed. I wanted to feel proud of myself for being able to sum up this person so entirely within 5 minutes. I wanted to be able to pat myself on the back from graduating from the School of Hard Knocks and becoming a full-blown social sociopath, but I felt awful. How boring life becomes when every dickwad at a party is exactly like every other dickwad at every other party. Sorry for cursing. The alarm on my phone went off. I had 10 minutes left before I needed to move my car, the most predictable and poetic sign from God that I could not stay in LA anymore. There was nowhere left to park. That one's a fun one, and it makes me look very cool. All right, so on a completely different note, this next one is a little different, okay? It's written as a monologue from the perspective of a woman who I greatly, greatly admired. I would visit her 2 times a week and listen to her tell stories about her life. She was a famous actress from the golden age of Hollywood, a girl from small-town Kansas who stumbled her way into a contract with MGM, and she spoke in accidental poetry. Do you want to hear something funny? My daughters think I have dementia. Isn't that sad? Just because they brought me to the doctor's office when I was really tired and asked me all these silly questions about things that I don't know or I couldn't remember. I had no idea what he was talking about, and all that meant I have dementia. Isn't that ridiculous? I have trouble with my memory sometimes, of course, but that doesn't mean I have dementia. When you get older, you have trouble with your memory, and then you're just old. It doesn't mean you have dementia. But this doctor told them I have dementia, so now I can't do anything. I tried to make toast the other day, and they came in here to tell me that I was doing it wrong. Not my daughters, the people who work here. Oh, those horrible people. They get paid so little, you know. And they come in here in the middle of the night to tell me I was making my toast wrong because I have dementia. Isn't that ridiculous? I have to take all these pills for things. And then I have to take more pills for the things that the other pills make happen. I've been getting so many bloody noses, and my eyes will not stop watering, and my nose is such an annoyance all the time. That's why I always carry a hanky. I always have one. Tissues are such a waste, you know. They trick you into buying things like tissues to keep you from buying them forever, and Lord forbid you leave one in your pocket or something when you do a wash. You get these little balls of cotton on everything, and they never come out of your pocket completely after that. That pocket will always have balls of cotton in it forever now. Isn't that ridiculous? Utterly ridiculous. That's why I always carry a hanky in my purse. More than one, actually, just in case I lose one or I can't reach my purse. The other day, I was watching that clown. Oh, God, what's his name? The idiot with the hair. Anyway, I was watching what he did today. Did you see? Those things were showing up all over in the country, you know, near New York. Oh, what's it called? I used to go there all the time when I worked still, when I was traveling. It'll come to me. Anyway, there were all these packages there all over, and they think it's the Democrats. I don't think so. I think it's the Republicans trying to frame the other side. Don't you think so? Isn't that suspicious? I think he told people to do it. It would make sense, you know, and global warming isn't real. Ugh. Have you seen how hot it's been? My God. The other day I was sitting outside with the dog, and it was perfectly still. Perfectly. And global warming isn't happening. Did you see about the tornadoes? They're happening all over, popping up all over the whole country all of a sudden. And it's horrible. And that man just sits up there and does nothing. Isn't that awful? Oh, do you want some tea or something, honey? I know it's a little hot for tea, but we have so much of it. You want a cookie or a little something? I can go get us something for the tea. They've all been gone lately, though. And I think the people here take too many, and then there's nobody left for anybody else. You know what? I don't think we need it, okay? We should be good. You know, I've been very good lately. I've just been eating fruits and what's it called lately? I've been very good. And the food here is terrible. The chicken, especially, it's like they boil it over and over again to get it that dry. It's horrendous. I'll eat the bacon, but that's about it. Just the bacon and the fruit. And what are they? What are they called? Like broccoli and carrots and things? Vegetables. Yes, thank you, dear. That's been happening so much lately. I can't think of a word for something, and then I get distracted. Did I tell you? I've been dreaming again. I never dream. I never really did. Isn't that odd? I mean, I suppose I did, but I just never remembered them. And lately I've been having these horrible dreams about death and murder and all sorts of horrible things. There's just so many sad things going on in the world. People are so sad, and they're just doing such horrible things. You know my friend who was murdered in 4-H? I was just thinking about her and her whole family. Isn't that awful? Did you read the book about it by that man, the famous one? The writer, he wrote the famous book about it. Oh, God, it's just awful. I still remember what my mother said to me after it happens. She said, well, sometimes, honey, bad things happen for no good reason. And I remember just asking, but why? But why? You don't understand things at that age, you know. Nothing like that really makes sense yet. It still doesn't. Did I tell you about the woman who died here the other night? They found her dead in her room. The next morning, she had just gone out for dinner the night before. Isn't that strange? Why are we here if they can't prevent that from happening? Listen, I know you've been moving a lot. And the other night, after I couldn't sleep, it was very late, and I snuck into the hallway and into her room, since they don't lock the doors here, and I took all of her silverware for you. A couple other things. They were just going to throw it all away, you know, so it's such a waste. Isn't that a waste to just throw it all away? There are people out on the street who don't have anything, let alone silverware, and these people were just going to throw it away. So I took the silverware for you if you need it at your new place. Speaking of, do you have a new beau yet? You're so pretty. You'll find a man. Don't worry for 1 minute. In fact, I actually might have someone that I could introduce you to. One of my daughter's friends, an actor or something. Very cute. Do you ever get to see your puppy? Oh, I hope so. I'm sure she misses you. Minnie's been hiding from me lately. Isn't that funny? She hides until I find her. I've been calling her Betty Davis because of the eyes she gives me when I finally do find her. It's absolutely hilarious. She looks just like that. Ah, she really is a funny little thing, isn't she? The other day, she was barking because of the little creatures that live outside and run around. The creatures that are out there, that are right out. Anyway, they're there because I give them things, and so they keep showing up. And she likes to bark at them, but they don't seem to mind it at all. They just keep doing whatever and collecting little things. Isn't that funny, though? I know the place is a mess. I keep thinking about moving this table over by that window. What do you think? I think it'll look really good over there. And then I can sit and eat breakfast and things, and the light will be better, don't you think? My daughter got so mad at me the other day because she thinks I'm distracted. But I just like to move things around. I really need to get out of here. Did I tell you about the woman who died? People are dying all the time here. It's not good. It's very sad, actually, and the food is terrible. And it's boring. They have nights out and things, sure, but it's painfully boring. There's nothing new. I talked to the girls about leaving, but they don't understand. And the shower doesn't work. How am I supposed to shower? The water goes everywhere. It's ridiculous. And that's dangerous to be stepping into a wet kitchen with the floor slippery from the water that got everywhere. And they come around and give you pills every day. That's all they do is give you pills. They don't care. They get paid so little. How can they care? It's sad, really. How are they supposed to live? I need to go to the Mayo Clinic. I need them to do a full checkup on me and tell my daughters there isn't anything wrong with me, because there really isn't, and then I wouldn't have to take so many pills every day. I can't even have my own Claritin. Can you believe that? I can't be trusted with it. It's ridiculous. That's why I need to leave. I cannot die here. I cannot. I really shouldn't have married him, you know. He was a very nice man, very smart, incredibly smart. But so sad. He was always writing, and he lied all the time. He didn't know when to stop. Everything was a lie. Well, nearly everything. It was because of his family, the way he was raised. His parents taught him to lie because they didn't tell him about his brother who died in the war. They just let him go on believing whatever they wanted. And then his son died. And he was always so sad after that. I loved him, but I shouldn't have married him. It was the wrong thing. Have you read any of his work? I keep his notebooks around here all the time. He was always writing, and then he died, and it's just sad, isn't it? The people that live these horrible lives, and it's so unfair. It breaks my heart. Like my sister and my mother in the mill house, Middletown. They didn't have a chance, not with the doctors. I really do think it's the doctor's fault. My nose has been running so much. It's the AFib. Makes my eyes irritated and red and my nose run. I keep a secret little bit of eye drops here, though. Nobody has to know, because they don't trust me. But that's why I need to get out of here. There are still so many missing things in the book that I really think we need to put in. A bunch of people I've worked with. Films. I've been taking some notes, but I can't find them anywhere. Trust me, I've looked. But we're missing very important things. There's just so much. And it's all so important. She brought a lot of joy to my life. I miss her very much. Dorothy Allison once said, "Write to save your dead, to introduce them to the people that they'll never meet and show them why you loved them. Give them a chance to love them too." I dedicate a lot of my energy to saving my dead. Sometimes I think I need to pay a little bit more attention to my living. Okay, this next essay is about class divide. I've been working through a lot of realization about privilege and financial success over the past few years. I grew up in Palmdale, in the middle of the Mojave, and I am forever grateful for the abundance of inspiration and fantastic material that place has provided me with. Honestly, it is the reason I started writing. So this next piece is dedicated to two of my muses. The first is the desert, and the second is my best friend in the whole world. It's really goofy, so I know we're starting off with tears, so give me 1 second so I can get in a new headspace. Okay. And this, do we have anyone that's less than a millennial? Younger than a millennial in here? You are? This is a phone. I'm just kidding. No, it really is a phone. Okay. Okay, call me when you get here so I can come down and get you. There's a coroner getting a body out of my neighbor's apartment, and they're not letting anyone in who doesn't live in the complex. I had just come from staying at a friend's house in West Hollywood for 2 days, and I needed another place to crash for 2 more days before I would start my 3-day stint in Glendale. You had suspected that your neighbor was a meth dealer for quite a few months now, but we always talked about it with an air of levity. An air of oh my God, wouldn't that be crazy? That's so Palmdale. Remember the house that blew up in high school because of the meth lab in the living room? Oh my God, weren't you dating someone that lived near there? But the day that the coroner arrived and you sent me pictures of a body bag being carried out from the peephole in your front door, we stopped joking about it. I called to tell you that I was parked, and you told me to wait in my car, that they were right in the middle of removing the corpse. So I just listened to music for a while before you knocked on my driver's side window. I got out, I gathered my suitcase and purse, and resumed our conversation as if absolutely no time had passed. That's terrifying. Could you see anything? Do you know who it was? You shook your head. No. I don't know for certain, but I think it was the girlfriend. I saw the guy earlier today, but who knows? I also have no idea how many people were actually living in that house, so it is anybody's guess. We walked up to your apartment and spent a fair amount of the evening talking about scary stuff that happened in high school. Do you remember the lockdown that lasted like 3 hours? We had a bucket set up in the corner in case anyone needed to pee. Oh my God, I would be mortified peeing in a bucket in like the middle of math class. Oh my God, with everyone listening, can you even imagine? I later realized the actual mortifying thing was having to specify which lockdown it was, because at a certain point they all just blended together. And the fact that we were in a lockdown for 3 hours because a man wandered onto the campus with a gun and wouldn't leave. Calling the police became a common shared experience that kids would like bond over. My dad took off, so they had to follow him with a helicopter. Well, my uncle shot through someone's window on the freeway and the guy almost bled to death. Well, my brother and his girlfriend shut down all of Avenue L for like 6 hours. They stole a U-Haul and they were in a high-speed chase that almost ended in a shootout. Okay, none of these stories were exaggerated or dressed up for dramatic effect. We would joke about which cops showed up and which ones you never wanted to deal with. Oh yeah, Officer Mikey! He's the one with the big mustache. He kind of looked like a Simpsons character. We would smile and nod, happy to normalize the eventful long weekend. Even now, I feel oddly comfortable with red and blue lights bathing the street outside on a particularly dark evening. It reminds me of being a kid. Do you remember the paper that they hung up in the locker room to keep girls from fighting? You mean the smiley face with the pieces of the girl's weaves and chunks of hair scotch taped to the top of its head? Yeah, that thing was terrifying. I remember when I moved to Simi Valley, and I was teased about growing up in the ghetto. I really didn't feel ashamed of where I was from until someone told me they had never seen a fist fight in person before. They were glad they were with someone who had experience with this type of thing so they could pull them out of the way before they were pummeled into oblivion. I didn't realize that most people my age were afraid to call the cops because they hadn't before. They didn't know what to say. I never thought of my high school experience as scary, but then moving to a place that had only ever had lockdown drills when I had at least like 5 stories under my belt, hiding in the theater, the bathroom stall, under my desk in the dark for 3 hours while texting my family, "I'm scared, I don't want to die," was really eye-opening. I love that we can laugh about this, guys. That's great. After the coroner's visit, we made tacos for dinner and sat around watching cheesy Netflix sitcoms while I edited the script for your fall play. I hadn't slept in my own bed for 3 nights, and little did I know this was the beginning of a 3-year-long adventure living in other people's houses. But I was still adjusting to my new life on the road, and the stress of getting ready to leave my boyfriend while simultaneously trying to find a new place to live pushed me into a brief but tearful 2 a.m. anxiety attack. And you poured us both vodka cranberries and sat with me on the floor until I caught my breath. And I don't remember what you said exactly, but you could always make me laugh by pointing out the absurdity of whatever situation I found myself in. And there we sat, a little drunk, crying and laughing after a ridiculously long day. And then at 2 a.m., someone knocked on the door. About 5 years after moving to Palmdale, I started making my way onto the guest list of upper crust art societies. I would attend opening nights at the opera, bustling with widowed philanthropists and retired grandsons of Civil War generals from the right side of the Mason-Dixon line. Auction previews for the ballet where supermodel ballerinas would wear white cotton gloves and black dresses to present the pieces up for sale. The sitting room only living rooms of the elite and well-to-dos of Beverly Hills are comfortably full and overlook the infinity pool and Art Deco Japanese gardens. Everyone listens to the artist speak about the inspiration with rigid backs and antique pearls pressing down on their protruding clavicles and solid gold watches, weighing down their drinking hand, encouraging them to move less and take bigger gulps. And then the small talk starts. "Oh my, your dress, it's lovely. The cut is quite chic. Who are you wearing?" My first thought is to check the tag. I got it at a thrift store in Topanga Canyon that sells vintage secondhand clothes. I think it was $27.50. My second thought is to lie. However, I don't know enough about what's in style or who's considered a respectable designer. I could tell you the most respectable designer at the outlet mall, but I seriously doubt the two match up. So I simply say, thank you so much. I'm actually not sure. It was a piece that my mother passed down to me. She held on to everything for years, knowing it would all come back in style. Usually this assuages them enough to elicit a genuine smile and a transitional compliment as they move on to the next party guest to start shallow conversations with. Two newlywed men approach us next. Your shoes, they are stunning. We have been admiring them from afar all evening. Were they a limited release? I haven't seen anything like them in ages, not since Fashion Week in New York 2 years ago. God, that was such a fabulous show. It was such a comprehensive collection. I am so sorry. I have forgotten myself. I'm Andy. This is Michael. We're staying in Malibu for the winter, but we're both initially from the Upper East Side. Such a coincidence, right? Where are you from? We don't move. The knock comes again. Hello? We rushed over to the door together, hand in hand like Laverne and Shirley, and took turns looking through the peephole. A tall, lanky white man with a shaved head and arms bathed in ink stood before us. He was twitchy, a blur of scratching itches and flinching at unidentifiable distant noises. He knocked again. We crouched against the base of the door. What do we do? I don't know. Wait for him to go away. Another knock. It seems like he might really need something, okay? What if he's looking for his dealer and he can't find her because she died? Or what if she was cheating on her husband with him and now this guy knows she's dead and he thinks that the husband killed her? Or what if... He pounded on the door so hard it shook against our backs. What if he brings down the door? He's not going to break down the door, okay? We didn't do anything. Criminals don't need you to do something to break into their house, especially if they think that it's empty. Do you think that he can hear the TV? Yes. Maybe we're asleep. We could sleep with the TV on. Lots of people do that. A loud popping noise echoed in the space between the apartments. We looked out the window. He had thrown a bottle of blue Gatorade off the second-story balcony in a fit of frustration. It didn't do much. He mumbled some profanities and ran down the stairs outside, shaking the entire complex. Maybe he's gone. Do you think he was having withdrawals? Yeah. You know what? I bet she was the dealer, and he doesn't even know she's dead. Then why the hell would he be knocking on my door? I don't know, because he thinks they took off for something. Maybe he's all disoriented and he thinks he's knocking on their door. The apartment shook again. He was running back up the stairs, unsure of what else to do. He pounded on the door with desperation. Hello? Hello? We have to call the cops. I am so not in the mood to deal with a police report. I know, but we cannot do this all night. My fingers found the familiar numbers with ease. Hello? Yeah, there's a man pounding on the front door. He appears to be, struggling. There was an incident at the neighbors earlier today, and we thought we'd play it safe. Yeah, no problem. I gave them the address, and within 5 minutes, 3 squad cars pulled up into the front parking lot of the complex. Our meth addict disappeared when he saw the lights and didn't come back for the rest of the evening. We were both questioned for the police report, and were told they were going to have a car parked out front for the rest of the evening to make sure he didn't come back. He had matched a few wanted ads locally, and with a death reported earlier and just next door, they wanted to be safe. I woke up only once in the middle of the night and looked off the balcony for comfort. And there was our police officer, Mikey, drinking his morning coffee and dabbing his mustache with a McDonald's napkin. I'm from, the Mojave, originally. But I've been in this city for quite a few years now. Around this point, I get a very knowing grin. Oh, really? I had a cousin who lived up near there. Lancaster? Have you ever heard of Lancaster? He had a tragically horrible life, tragically horrible. I would look down into my unidentifiable wine, complimentary but still far beyond my price range. Yeah, I'm familiar with Lancaster. I grew up right next door, actually. Palmdale? A grimace. Oh, that must have been interesting. Yeah, it was, actually, I have to say. I was hardly ever bored. We would laugh together, like old friends who had never gotten over a falling out about which side was actually the right side of the Mason-Dixon line. Oh, God. Do we need a break or are we good? Okay. If anyone needs to pee, they can absolutely just go pee. I don't mean to be holding you up here hostage. Oh, we're actually doing really good on time. Over the past few years, I've lived in New Orleans for a total of about 7 months. And I wrote a handful of pieces about my time there. But tonight, I will only be sharing one. So if you want more, you'll have to pre-order the book. New Orleans is one of my absolute favorite places in the whole world, but it can be very frightening if you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time. I love the crickets, too. It reminds me of an old Ani DeFranco recording that I listened to like forever ago, and she's like, we should hire crickets for this next tune. Okay. The silence of the quarter midday has an eeriness about it that only places accustomed to insanity hold when void of noise and presence. An anticipation that can only be felt in the weight of your arms swinging beside you, propelling you forward. The sound of children playing somewhere in the near distance echoed a few blocks away and traveled faintly through the narrow streets to where I stood. The white noise of people day drinking in bars and restaurants provided an ambient static as I walked at a brisk clip through the stout blocks, checking my progress by the words beneath my feet. I heard her scream before I saw her. Her voice cracking, struggling to eke words from her throat as she ran, dropping me into the midst of my nightmares. Help! Please, somebody help me! Her flip-flop clad feet slapping the pavement with such a ferocity that could be felt in the surrounding asphalt, sending shivers up the feet and legs of all of the passers-by, stopping our hearts for a few fleeting moments of panic and moral uncertainty. Her eyes were fixed ahead of her, meeting the gaze of every stranger she passed, every stranger she pleaded with for someone to do something, not quite sure what. Half of her head was shaved, and on the other half, long, stringy, faded pink hair blew behind her. Her knuckles were covered in personalized ink stains that ran up her arms and sat comfortably on her clavicles, despite the current state of the human they resided upon. Following less than 5 feet behind her was a man, unremarkable looking in every way, running with the swiftness and agility of someone who participates in his company's annual triathlon. Between her broken sentences and fearful pleas, he met every judgmental glare with a strong retaliation to discount her inferred allegations. She robbed me. He spat these words with such vitriol, it froze the audience in our assigned places along the alley to question who was truly in danger. Even if she did rob him, he was chasing her with what can only be assumed to be an attempt to physically retrieve his belongings. Red-faced, sweat dripping from his temples, he screamed, "The police are right behind me," as if to say, "I am not a criminal, please do not interfere," as if I was, which led me to believe that he is either the smartest criminal alive, or he in fact did rob this woman and was simply attempting to keep an eye on her while his attacker while the police caught up to him. But I kept coming back to the fear in the eyes of the spindly young woman. Of course, being a young woman myself, I can understand the panic that might have ensued the moment she was caught with her hand in his pocket, especially since he is obviously bold enough to chase her down. But there was something else there, a purely physical fear an inclination towards running that has led her to this very street on a normal Tuesday afternoon, and the desperation to either rob someone to keep them from starving or call upon strangers to help from an unlikely assaulter who had victimized himself enough to paralyze the ethics of even the best-intentioned citizens. And she went unhelped. The fear of being ignored in a time of great need is terrifying. And with every set of eyes that she met that did nothing, I could see the fear inside of her multiplying. The fear of apathy, lack of action, unwillingness to get involved, the fear that we may all be completely and utterly alone. I only know two things about the truth of this situation. Firstly, everyone backed out of the way while their eyes were locked with this panic-stricken girl. And secondly, no one moved for a solid 10 to 15 seconds after this little parade of he said, she said passed by, and there were no cops behind them. I suppose there is a third thing. I know that I did nothing. I felt a rush of adrenaline pushing my arms and hands to help, to reach out and take action. But my feet and my legs were just telling me to do nothing but jump out of the way and blend into the old vibrant colored houses with different colored shutters. Her eyes met mine, and she pleaded with me, "Do not ignore this moment. I need you to do something." But my uncertainty of what was right prevented me from potentially saving someone. When push came to shove, I looked in the eyes of someone who needed me and then looked away. And after only 10 or 15 seconds, I continued on with my day with nothing left inside but an elevated heart rate. After my move to New York was canceled, I extended my stay in the Big Easy by over a month. I finally hit the road to wait out the pandemic in a little suburb right outside of Boston. I believe this would be my 10th drive across the country. And I have to say, it really started to look like the only consistency my life would ever have was buried in the familiarity of interstate freeways and carbon copy hotel rooms. I've always felt at home on the open road, but traveling 1,500 miles during a pandemic can really put a damper on the excitement of a solo road trip. I hadn't left my shotgun Airbnb for almost 70 days, and I was having anything I needed delivered and would obsessively wipe down all of my groceries and any packaging they came in. I only ordered pizza twice, the first time triggering an anxiety attack so severe I couldn't sleep all night, worrying that I had ingested this new mysterious disease and would surely die alone in the middle of the country. The second time, I was so desperate for bread and cheese that I didn't have the mental energy to worry about it. I shared a wall and a porch with my neighbor, Carolyn, an 80-year-old ex-concert violinist who lived for coffee table art books and her rescue cat, Jeremy. Whenever I heard her gardening, I would pop my head outside and ask how she was doing. We saw very little of each other and always at a distance of at least 6 feet. We did have wine one night on the front patio 2 days before I left. We both got a little tipsy and talked about how marriage was always a mistake, giggling through the irrationality of it all. And we shared ghost stories and talked about our fears of dying. I even told her a little bit about Shirley. It was nice, but it was bittersweet. "Oh, I don't want you to leave," she said. "What if I die in the middle of the night? No one will know. Except Jeremy, of course. And my plans." She laughed through her fears, but somehow it made them more possible. The absurdity of life is what makes it all manageable, I suppose. But the painful injustices make the absurdity all the more cruel. Keep pushing the boulder, I thought. It'll get easier. If you just had to keep starting over and it isn't possible for anything else to ever happen, you learn to just expect the boulder to fall, right? It hurts a little less. Such as death. I sat up most of the evening in the dark, trying to wrap my head around the ever-present fear of the unknown that's been sitting with the world since March. We listen to statistics about pop-up morgues and collectively dream about maggots, crying ourselves to sleep to quiet our obsessive thoughts of constant loss. And yet somehow we're just supposed to keep living. The morning I left, I was up by 4:30 and on the road by 5. I hadn't driven in over 2 months, and I hadn't seen anything of the outside world except what was being posted online. I had run out of patience for my things, leaving my car solidly packed and oddly sorted. I didn't have it in me to care anymore. Nothing was color-coded. My clothes were shoved wherever they could fit, with no regard to where they belonged. It was still dark, but I had the guiding light of Google Maps to get me out the door and on the freeway, and hot coffee at the ready and a 70s playlist for the road. The sun came up as I approached the Mississippi border. The landscape rapidly shifted from swampy bayou to dense forests to churches in trailers decorated with banners promoting gun rights and damning abortions. Confederate flags flew on the porch of every home, and my stomach lurched. Please, God, do not let me die here. Let me at least make it across the border to Connecticut. The sky got brighter, and then dark and gray, and it rained on and off for hundreds of miles, rinsing the smears of oversized bugs from my windshield, before streaks of orange striped the sky, the cover of a children's Bible in a doctor's office waiting room. All you had to do was turn to your left or right to find the missing block lettering. God is good, the reckoning is coming, are you ready, heaven or hell, you decide. The grammar was all over the place, and the capitalization of the letters was as inconsistent as the font choices. Instead of frightening me, it actually kind of helped me feel at peace with my lack of connection to religion, because, listen, I might not make it into heaven, but at least I could spell. A giant green sign that read, "Sweet Home, Alabama," welcomed me across the next invisible border. Pressed metal reminders were spaced out evenly every few miles on the freeway, encouraging people not to litter, reading, "Keep Alabama the Beautiful." I wanted to write a letter of some kind, explaining the difference between a clever turn of phrase and nonsense, but decided I was too young to start writing letters that would never be read. I stopped for gas around noon. No one wore masks, despite the the worldwide ordinance. And not even considering my cherry red car, my California plates and shrouded face was the equivalent to wearing a giant eco-friendly sign around my neck that said, "Proud Democrat." Thankfully, my Bernie Sanders sticker was safely covered on the inside of my sun visor. Or I might have been burned at the stake for wanting to ruin America with my socialistic tendencies. Oh, sorry, that one always cracks me up. I spent the rest of the day driving through Georgia, Tennessee, and into Virginia. The yellow lines on the road were the only thing that kept me grounded in reality. Hours vanished into tomorrows, and within a moment, I had crossed another invisible line that stole another hour from me all at once. Time had already become nothing more than an unreliable way to measure the breaths we spent awake, and yet here I was, dabbling in time zones. When I finally stopped for the night, I filled my arms with anything valuable from my car, waddled inside the hotel, rode up 4 floors in the elevator, adjusting bags like babies on my hips, and played the room key game where you try to slide the card in and push the door open with one hand before it relocks itself, before dropping all of my things in a pile on the floor and flopping onto the bed in exhaustion. 13 hours on the road. 6 hours before I had to get up again and head back out. I turned on the air conditioner full blast in an attempt to cool off after a 90-degree, 90% humidity drive through the South. I peeled off my clothes, stretched my arms in every direction, the muscles deep in the rotation of my shoulders, aches from gripping the wheel for so long, minorly adjusting to keep my 3,000-pound hunk of metal in its designated lane. I took a scalding hot shower, trying to soothe the tension from the depths of my shoulder blades and quell the anxiety of picking up this deadly airborne disease by just burning away the top few layers of skin. No disinfectant seemed to be enough. I must fry the living organisms crawling on me and let them peel, slough them away with overly bleached washcloths and watch them swirl away into the bowels of the hotel drainage system beneath my toes. I laid out the clothes for the next day, put away my toiletries, and set an alarm for 4:30 a.m. I climbed under the covers and fell asleep instantly. The vibration of my alarm buzzed against the plastic-coated, fake wood-covered particle board housing a King James Bible, and I sat up with the depressing realization that I was still alive in this nightmarish reality. And like clockwork, by 4:58 a.m., I was sitting behind my steering wheel once again, staring blankly out a windshield with unfamiliar skylines sprinkled with touchstones of the world before. A giant yellow shell, green neon lettering that read Holiday Inn, and pink and orange bubble letters that encouraged Americans to eat more donuts and drink more coffee. At least I could count on giant corporations to keep me from drowning in an ocean of newness. Never in my life did I think that million-dollar branding would be the anchor that kept me tethered to the comfort of life before quarantine. But there we were, dawn-kissed sky, familiar glowing logos, and me venturing once more across state lines and ever-changing landscapes. About an hour into New Jersey, I started seeing mileage signs for New York City. I was so close. I was supposed to be driving into Manhattan and moving into my new little apartment. I was supposed to be going swing dancing and seeing Patti LuPone in Company on Broadway and strolling through Central Park and learning how to take the subway to and from work at a big publishing company downtown. Instead, I was watching the Empire State Building bathe in glittery sunlight from the George Washington Bridge over the Hudson. I was running low on gas and had to navigate my way through Yonkers, lost in the what-ifs of a better timeline, to the nearest gas station. I hooked my mask over my ears, filled up one last time, and got back on the freeway. I knew I had crossed into New England by the abundance of bumper stickers hopeful of Democratic presidential candidates that never made it past the primaries. I felt like I was surrounded by tenured English professors currently just working from home, just out for like a quick little jaunt to Whole Foods for a non-dairy milk product and, I don't know, just a little something salty to snack on. My shoulders fell. My hidden Bernie Sanders sticker and I were finally part of the scenery. I romanticized about the idea of running away to Cape Cod for a weekend or even the Catskills or Coney Island. I couldn't keep living in this perpetual state of numbness, constantly reminding myself that the world canceled all its plans and was grounded until further notice. Once I got to Woburn, I rolled down the windows to fill the crisp, clean air, and it smelled like a Hallmark Channel movie. Crunchy leaves, herbal tea, warm lemon cookies, and yacht club members named like Tag and Hunter. I carried in the bare minimum to get me through the first night and left the rest in the car. I ordered pizza that night and sat on my new porch sipping red wine, already homesick for the thunderstorms that had lulled me to sleep those past 3 months. That's the end of that one. All right, here's the deal. We're running like 5 minutes behind, so I think I'm going to skip one. I know, it's a good one. It's about death. But I'm still going to read the transition, and then I think I'm just going to... And then I'm going to skip to the end, because I think you guys have sat through enough. Yeah. Okay, well, you and I will talk later, Dad. I'll read you another one, okay? Oh, don't cry. You're going to make me cry again. There's all these cameras. Okay. At the end of last year, I got to see David Sedaris perform a reading of his newest release, Happy Go Lucky. He sold out a 2,000-seat house and spent over 3 hours signing copies of his books after the show. It was the first time I felt optimistic about the potential for success if all you can do is tell stories. This is not a particularly sexy career path. Okay, I know that. It's very, very, very hard to convince people to buy a ticket to sit for 90 minutes and just listen to you talk. So thank you to every single person here that took a gamble on me tonight. Thank you. Sedaris gave one piece of advice to any writer in attendance who was considering a career path similar to his. Never let them see how many pages are on your podium. No matter how much they love you, they will spend the entire evening watching you turn the pages, counting down the minutes till they get to go home. So I'm sorry to those of you who could see my pages. This is all to say we're nearing the end of the night. You have almost made it. Hang in there. I'm going to skip the story called Graveyards, because it is long and it is already on the internet. Also, shout out to Stage to Stream because I did it on their show. Megan sitting right here. So if you want to see Graveyards, I'll send you a link. It exists. So here's the next transition after Graveyards until the very, very end. I greatly debated reading the final chapter and epilogue of There's No Place Like House. It felt like I was spoiling the ending somehow. But after much consideration, I realized that the best parts of the book are the strange and unusual tales that make up the space between the first chapter and the last, not the observational bookends that package those 2 years of my life in a neat and digestible way. But that's kind of poetic, isn't it? We're always so preoccupied with how we start and finish things that we forget that it's all those seemingly insignificant moments between milestones that make up the best parts of our lives. So here's the ending to a book that took me 2 years to write and 2 more years to build up the courage to share. There's no place like home. It was in the process of packing up my things in Boston that I came to the realization that I would never find the home that I had been searching for all my life. I remembered a conversation I had with my mother when I was getting ready to leave New Orleans, when she asked me about finding an agent for this book. You know, I really don't know how to write a query letter, Mom, for a story without an ending. I need to learn what the protagonist has to learn before I'll even know what the book is really about. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath and I sunk away from my half-full suitcase. Damn it. I am my own protagonist. Protagonists are never happy. Not until the end. The hero's journey is a grueling trudge towards finding something that transforms our protagonist into a somehow simultaneously happier and more jaded version of themselves. A coming-of-age story. A great quest. The brave little tailor. 2 months later, after being given a 1-week notice to move out of my mother's apartment, this brought me a modicum of comfort, reassurance that I was nearing the climax of my book. Out of all the unknowns in the world, I knew how to tell a great story. What if I approached my life in the same way I approached a piece of fiction? What did I know? I knew there is usually an unanswerable question. The theme. The big, awkward elephant in the room that forces the audience or the reader to examine their own lives with a fresh perspective. I knew that my unanswerable question is, what is home? Next, I moved into the process of charting the hero's journey. I searched for the feeling of home since I was small. As I grew up, I sought home with friends, in theater houses I spent my time performing in front of, and eventually in my romantic relationships. Their families became my family. Hi, guys. Their homes became my home, and year after year, hopefully not this time, I lost it all again and again and again. So I started traveling. If people weren't my home, if Los Angeles wasn't my home, there must be a place, a physical location that felt like this ever-elusive idea of safety and belonging. But I wasn't finding it. The zippers on my suitcases were sticking and worn down, and the locks no longer worked, but just clicked into place for show instead of security. The tires on my car were perpetually balding, and I slept better on air mattresses with stolen hotel pillows, finding comfort and peace in temporality. Something wasn't adding up, and I was running on nothing but fumes and a longing for rest. It is often said that the protagonist cannot get what they want. They get what they need. I remembered that horrible feeling of seeing the Manhattan skyline from the George Washington Bridge as I passed through on my way to somewhere else. The Emerald City. At the time, a city with portable morgues and road signs directing healthcare workers in hazmat suits to contaminated rooms with dying people. Broadway was shuttered, and there were no horses of a different color. The wizard had already left. He retired via balloon back to Kansas, and I sat alone in my red car at a gas station in Yonkers, having no idea how to leave Oz. So I waited for the city to reopen. I went to my mother's apartment, the closest thing I had to a storm cellar, curled up in a ball and tried to catch my breath in the midst of a political revolution that threatened to take our breath away. These oxygen thieves were hiding everywhere, in grocery stores, gas stations, neighborhood barbecues, restaurants, even in our own homes. Invisible flying monkeys that no one could evade. And a government that contradicted itself more often than it made sense. 14 days, 10 days, loss of taste, swollen toes, sinus issues are fine, but a runny nose is deadly, fever, brain damage, organ failure, but you'll be fine. Just deep breaths, okay? Just breathe. They probably won't find you here. You might survive if you can just stay here. But she found me, the Wicked Witch. A stark, white-haired, bipolar landlord with a Bostonian accent thick enough to pull a boat of English breakfast tea across the harbor. I was given 1 week's notice. I don't want to hear. She's not my problem. Pandemic, not my problem. I desperately tried to find a way to stay near Oz. I had come this far. I couldn't just give up. How could I go home if there was nowhere left to go? I found a sublet in Maine and paid, but the poster never responded. Refund issued. I found an apartment just 20 minutes away, the basement of an old Victorian house in Medford. I typed my credit card in, and he actually confirmed. I started planning, packing with gusto, looking up nearby laundromats and restaurants within walking distance. 2 days later, he canceled too. Something came up. Refund issued. I had 4 days left. And my optimistic silver lining way of thinking was gone. I couldn't even remember what it felt like to think things might work out. And I knew right then I could never have the white picket fence, the guest bedroom that always had clean sheets, the fridge that was stocked with more than a week's worth of food, the big backyard or lost coins in the couch cushions. I had to build my own home within the safety and comfort of myself. I had to redefine what home was, and I needed it to be something so independent of anybody else, I could never lose it again. Something that I could carry with me always. I called my boys in Glendale, picturing them sitting on the couch in the living room, the pride flag still hanging in the sliding glass door, Southern California streaming in, bathing everything in rainbows. I'm coming home. The world is ending. It's 2020, and everything is on fire. I am subletting an apartment in Studio City, and I am watching the sky turn orange. The air quality has been deemed unsafe. Thank God we all wear masks now. Nothing has been okay for years, but life goes on regardless of its okayness. My season this year just consisted of dyeing my hair teal and dropping acid. Sorry, Dad. After 8 hours of coloring on my jeans, playing in a canopy of tulle and blue lighting, and staring in the mirror in an attempt to understand the difference between human perception and reality, I felt a great sense of relief and understanding about what was actually important. The winds of change are here. We must ride them to our destination or perish. Despite my complete and utter exhaustion and travel fatigue so severe it makes my bones ache, I cannot escape the constant urge to run away. I'm currently Googling places where there isn't any trouble. I'm starting to wonder if there is such a place. Maybe Paris? I never should have given up my dream to be an astronaut. It seems like the only thing left to do is leave this giant floating ocean to fend for itself. In the meantime, I'll be booking hotels and airfare for someplace as far away from here as I can get. Behind the moon, beyond the rain. Maybe it's okay to keep running. If all of your demons have caught up to you, there's nothing left to be afraid of. Thank you.